How's it going, people? Sam Slappy here, and this is Runescape Lore, where we talk about the history and kind of the backstory of Runescape itself. So there's quite a bit of it, and in the last episode we covered the, well, what I like to call the prequel age, basically the age before Gielinor, if you can even call it such a thing. Basically the big bang time of Runescape is the easiest way to look at it. So after we've done that, it's now time to move on to the first stage, and well, the first stage is known as the Age of Creation. This is basically when Gielinor was founded by Guthix, and pretty much everything that went on from that until Guthix went to sleep, so yeah. Without further ado then, I think we should get into it. So the first stage itself, or the Age of Creation if you will, was the dawn of Gielinor. And it all began when Guthix discovered Gielinor, the last and perfect creation of the Elder Gods. Overwhelmed by its beauty, he ended up creating portals to bring peaceful races that could live in balance with themselves and the world. The first stage was roughly 4,000 years long, give or take, and ended when Guthix eventually descends into his slumber. So from the very beginning then, is when Guthix discovers Gielinor itself. This, as far as we're concerned, is the very first year of the first age. So Guthix, the god of balance, ends up discovering Gielinor, the last creation of the Elder Gods. This was after travelling through many worlds after his own world was ruined. It was here that he found several more artifacts. These were the Elder artifacts. The Stone of Jazz, what would later become known as the Staff of Armadil, as well as a horn. Taken by the planet's beauty, he decided to share it with mortals. Which brings us to Gielinor's inhabitants, the very first. So after shaping it to his desire, Guthix, now the most powerful god alive at this point, uses a portal called the World Gate. It's also known as the Portal of Life to some other races. This was in order to bring various races to Gielinor, eager to have them inhabit it without the influence of any gods he so despised. These races were the humans, dwarfs, fairies and gnomes, and a few others also arrived to the planet. Meanwhile, he decides to invite Seren to come too, and she ventures to the planet with her elven kind. She constructs the Tower of Voices in the centre of a clearing in the forest of Isafdar, and leads the elves there through the World Gate itself. She then breaks off a piece of herself for each of the 8 elven clans, and set out to vision for Privthinus, a crystal city that would coexist with the forest. It would have been an octagon with 8 towers, one for each clan to be grown from a special seed, and 8 walls. Contact with the elven homeworld is maintained through at the moment though. Not long after that, humans begin to spread out, and runes are soon created. After arriving to the realm, the first humans are greeted by Guthix, near what is now known as Ardone. They settle in farming communities and meet up with each other annually. Guthix creates a very large but finite amount of runestones, using the Stone of Jazz for the humans to use, and has missionaries such as Miscelonia spread all these runes around between the humans. A child by the name of Jack discovers a spell he calls Fire Strike, and eventually becomes the first Druid. He also founds the Wizards Guild, where the first wizards begin wearing robes with pointy hats and study magic. Gielinor is soon dubbed Runescape by the humans after the runes they received from Guthix. And at one point, a man named Harold dies, the first human to die within the realm, and thus becomes the escorter of souls of the dead to the grim underworld, Gielinor's afterlife. Meanwhile, an elf by the name of Halunid discovers the human civilizations and ends up reporting it to Seren. Guthix returns every now and then to check on the races of Gielinor to see how they're progressing. Now, this next part I assume is part of the first stage, although it's unclear, but we do know it's towards the end of the first stage or the beginning of the second. So I'm going to include it in this one. This is all about the Kethsi, and the fact that they were destroyed. The Elder Mage Etheron finds the Stone of Jazz, and ends up bringing it to his home planet of Kethsi. This is where it is placed near the Mage Conclave on Mount Firewake. The Kethians use this stone for various purposes, and it brings prosperity to the realm. However, unbeknownst to them, the Dragonkin soon find them, and unable to resist their rage, they decide to attack the Kethsi. The Kethians resist, but are eventually slaughtered, However, eventually they do discover Bane ore. It turns out to be a very strange mineral, and it can be magically attuned to actually be able to fight off the Dragonkin. This discovery, however, does come too late for the Kethians, and the last Kethians are massacred on the Isle of San, but not before Duthana left a message chronicling the event in an underground library. Again, this next one, I assume it happened sometime during the First Age, although it could potentially be before the First Age. And this is the fact that Bandos finds and eventually takes over Ubiusk. So Bandos himself was one of the newer young gods. Bandos became the god of war and finds the peaceful and prosperous realm of Ubiusk. This is where goblins, ogres, orcs and orcs live, in the primitive hunter-gatherer communities. He swiftly takes over and turns the realm into a war-ridden hellhole though, forcing the races to fight in wars for his personal amusement and build structures for him to worship. Bandos eventually divides and organises the races and teaches them agriculture, metalwork as well as warfare. Again, this next one is believed to happen during the First Age. This is the fact that Virago emerges. An extremely powerful, rocky and sentient being is created by the Anima Mundi. This Virago proceeds to cause large destruction across Gielinor until he is defeated using the Maul of Omens. Whilst not destroyed, Virago retreats to a cave and enters a slumber, to awaken only in the 6th Age, this time slightly more passive than what he used to be. Next after that is the story of the Tazar and the fact that they end up leaving the kiln. This was assumed to be very late First Age and potentially very early Second Age. It's kind of vague because this happened quite a long time ago. But left without duty, some Tokhar decide to leave the Elder Kiln itself to explore the volcano, building the Tkot Zo to supply them with sacred lava, assuring their survival. Despite their brethren's protests though, they end up settling in a city near to the surface. However, their separation from the kiln soon evolved their bodies to an inferior form, and soon they begin to call themselves the Tazar. The Tazar build up a sort of caste-based society in the volcano, but having lost their immortality, they lay eggs which hatch new Tazar when provided with sufficient heat from the lava, and these Tazar inherit all memories of the previous Tazar. It was at this point that Guthix had become increasingly worshipped, much to his annoyance as what happened to his homeworld, he wasn't much of a fan of gods, to put it lightly. And because of this, he began to fear that he would become like the gods who had destroyed his realm. In an attempt to actually be forgotten, Guthix decides to descend into the earth and slumber, hoping for Gielinor to be free of gods forever. He also encourages Seren to also depart, and she sadly agrees. Guthix goes to sleep, and leaves the Elder Artifacts behind. However, Seren herself finds herself unable to part from her elves, and decides to remain in Tyrannon. This marks the start of Guthix's sleep, and also marks the end of the First Age, as well as the beginning of the Second. So as it is the First Age, we don't particularly know a humongous amount of information about it, but from doing the quests and coming across some other things doing other quests, we have found out a fair amount more than what we used to do. For example, Virago, that's completely brand new, as well as some of the names and stuff transferring runes very early on. But for the most part, that is the First Age. We may learn a couple bit more when Privdinus actually comes out, but for now, that is everything. So yeah, hope you all enjoyed that, a little bit different from the first original version. And until next time, I will catch you all later. Have a good one.